I hope you're having an amazing day today. Today I will be talking about the security aspect of Salesforce, which is very important in my opinion. Security plays a crucial role in Salesforce platform. So we'll be covering a very basic security today because I don't want it to get into too much of detail. But I promise you guys I will cover in-depth security in the coming videos. So if you haven't watched my previous videos, I would encourage you to please check out. So where I've covered user creation and some basic information about the user interfaces and etc. Okay, all right, let's get started. So I logged into my org, as you can see, and so the first thing I wanted to talk about the password policies. So password policy is pretty straightforward concept. I'm pretty sure most of you already knows what password policies is all about. It's for instance, when your password will expire and the number of digits you need to enter before entering a new password. What happens when you try to log in many times, kind of things. So let's talk about organization wide password policies, which is common across the Salesforce org, and then you can override based on your profile settings. So to go to password policies, the first thing you have to do is that you have to go to setup. And as you can see, we are already in the setup screen, right? And you can either look under the setup option, and I don't know where the password policy is located, so I often do type setup and a quick find, so it will take you there straight away. So let's go to password policies. And you can see this is pretty basic stuff up there, like user password expires in 90 days. Depending upon your company settings, your system admin can decide, no, I want it to be expired in 30 days. Password history, you can keep 4 password remembers so that the user do not enter that again. Minimum password length, you can make it to whatever you want. You can make it 12, you can make it 15. Password complexity, you can add alphanumeric and special characters, right? Password question requirement, this is very silly, right? I mean, to have a password as your question. I mean, I haven't seen anyone doing it, but yeah, even if someone wants to do it, that's really not a great practice, right? Okay. Maximum invalid login attempts. So I think 10 is too much. Usually it's 5 or 3, but depends upon your company policies again, right? Okay, so you can set all other options here. Lockout effective period, pretty straightforward, right? It's not a rocket science. So okay, so next thing I wanted to talk about is the trusted IP address. So trusted IP address, I presume most of you already know what trusted IP address. So let me give you a very brief intro so that you get the context what I'm talking about. So you work in a big corporate. Let's say you work for a company XYZ or whatever corporation. Let's say you work in a big brewing company which makes the world's greatest beer, right? So they have a big they have a big IT department. So where the sysadmin excuse me, is responsible for managing an IP address. So he or she has created the trusted IP list. So where a person has specified an IP address starting from XYZ to blah 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 to ending to something will be considered as a trusted IP, so that your laptop or your devices who comes under that IP are considered as a trusted IP address because the organization trusts this device to be used in the network. You know what I'm trying to say. So similar context we have in Salesforce called trusted IP. So what Salesforce does that with this concept is you specify a start IP and an end IP address, and excuse me, and if you are logging in from if you're logging in from a device or from wherever, and if your IP address falls between the start and end range, Salesforce lets you log in using your username and password without any problem. But if it falls beyond the range, so it will ask you to enter a valid code, which is a 5-digit code. So it's often emailed to you. So you grab the code and enter it, you're in. So the main idea of trusted IP is not to block you from logging in. It's just to make sure that you are who you're claiming to be. You are. It's just for security reason, an extra layer of security, because the Salesforce say, "Oh, look, I don't trust you," but so there are certain things I wanted you to do for me, so that to make sure that we trust each other, something like that. Okay, so to set that up, we go to network access, and you set that up. And most of the sysadmin people or Salesforce admin people does that for you. So based on your company requirement, right? Start IP address and an IP address. So that's right. Now there's one more session. Excuse me. Settings I wanted to talk about is session settings. So you go to here. You can see and help documentation about this as well. So let me open that for you. So Salesforce has a pretty good help documentation. And in my opinion, this is the best place if you wanted to know about a certain option or certain feature, because no one knows completely about everything inside Salesforce. It's a huge platform, man. They're evolving every time. I mean, they're having 3 releases a year, so a lot of stuff's being added to it, and they've been taken off. I mean, moved to different places in there. So if you're coming from a classic background, you will find a lot of things being moved to different settings. Okay, so sorry, I digress. So you talk. You can see we talk about the timeout value, right? It means that when you are not using your org, if you leave it if there's no activity, right, for 2 hours, it will time off your org. So you need to log in again. So that's all about it, right? Another thing I would like you to focus on, requires security token for APIs. So if you're using an APIs, right, for connecting to an org, so you might have to pen your password with the security token. Now you might wonder, where can I get my security token, right? So security token, you can go to your user profile settings, right? And you type security, reset my security token. When you reset it, it will email you the security token. So use that token to for integration or whatever you want to do, right? Okay, let's go back to setup again. Right, so that's pretty much. I wanted to talk about this session settings. You can find more information here, right? So a lot of options there. So you just read about it, and you get to know a lot of stuff about it. Okay, all right. So the most important thing I wanted to talk about today are profiles. So if you remember from our previous lecture that when we created a user, right? So let me go to the user management, and sorry, not the user management, my bad. So this is the user I've created test, and if I go inside, you can see that there's a profile associated, standard platform user. So every user needs to have a profile associated with it. Profile determines what all the things you can do within Salesforce means, and access to a different object. Let's say you wanted to allow some users to only have read access on an account so that they don't fiddle with account information. So you can do that using a profile. If you wanted the user to have write access means where they can modify stuff on an account. You can do that using profile. You can restrict a user from logging into an org. That you can do by using a profile. You can restrict a user from logging into an org based on a login hour. That you can do that, for instance, that if your company works from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., so you can set up a login hour saying that any user can, from Monday to, let's say 7 days a week, can only log in between 8 to 6, right? And you can't log in beyond that time. Okay, you can do all that using profile, and profile is a core of Salesforce security. There are roles. You may or may not assign a role to your test. We'll cover the roles and profile in depth in the next coming tutorial series, but today I wanted to focus on the basic aspect of profile, just to give you a glimpse what profile is all about and what all the different settings, right? So before you get into profile, just please make sure by going to user management setting and turn this option on, because I mean, if you are comfortable with a clunky and long screen, it's fine with a blah blah kind of data all chunked together at the same time. I find it extremely difficult to navigate, so I prefer to turn this on. So let's go to profile, and if you can see in the profile, right, there are some checkbox next to custom. There are delete and clone, and some don't have a delete and clone. Okay, so you have to understand there are two kinds of profile. One is a custom profile, one is a standard profile. Standard profile like sysadmin and the chatter free. So these are the profiles you can't delete it, and these are the profiles which are not customs. There is no custom checkbox. Right, and it's often advisable not to assign a standard profile to a new user unless the user is a sysadmin, right? If you are an integration user, or if you're a financial user, or if you're whatever user based on the company requirement, right? It's better to create a custom profile and assign the user that profile, right? Because custom profile, you can do a lot of things, and standard profile has a limitation. So we will go through a little bit about it today, right? And one of the things is that you can't delete a standard profile. As you can see, there is no delete option, right? So let's go to one of the custom profile, or let's go to a standard profile, right? Let's go to sysadmin profile. Go to S, and go to sys administration. So you can see that profile screen is divided into two parts. One is apps, one is system. So the assign apps, it's actually talks about the access to different apps you have. So the connect visible in the settings that specify which apps are visible in the app menu, and that is something like this. And you can see that different apps visibility. So I can see marketing, I can see community. You can see that based on the profile app settings. So you go here and you click on edit, and if you don't want something to be visible there, just untick it so it will become invisible, right? And another thing is about object settings, which is very important. Object settings is actually that talks about different objects you have access to, like create, read, update, delete, CRUD access, right? Read, create, edit, delete. So let's go to an account just to give you a glimpse of what I'm talking about. Account is a Salesforce standard object, right? So as you can see, standard profile, which is this is a sysadmin profile, have read, create, edit, delete, view all, modify all access, and have access to all the fields, right? Read access or edit access, whatever, right? So you can actually change it using a custom profile. Let's say I create a custom profile and I do not want to give, say, a developer let's say in an organization, right? In a Salesforce, in a company, we use Salesforce. Just to give you an example, and I do not want to give delete access of an account to a developer, right? So what often I do is that create a profile and add developers to that profile and untick the delete option from here for this account. That means user can't delete, belonging to this profile can't delete an account. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here. So this is very powerful option, and if I don't want someone to have edit access, I can untick it. So that means user can't modify the values. So you can pretty much control a lot of things using profile. It's very powerful. I mean, it's like great powers comes with great responsibility. So use that with caution, right? So, and it's always better to check out with your Salesforce admin before mucking around if you've been given access to modify the profile. I mean, most of the time it's the Salesforce admin who controls it, but depends from company to company, right? Okay, so sorry, I digress. Okay, so this is for Apex class, visual page access, or everything you can control, right? And flow access, you can, and system permissions. So let's look into system permission. This talks about who has access to activities, and if someone says, "Look, I don't have access to Apex REST service," so the way you do it, so look, go to that person's profile and go to system permission, come here and tick this option. So the person will, and all the user belonging to that profile will have access to Apex REST services, right? So yeah, so it's about the system options. We will cover that more detail in a later video. So today I just wanted to give a glimpse about what profile is all about, because please don't get overwhelmed. There are a lot of options there to tweak, but you will get amazing help documentation from here, help from this page. And if you remember, I talked about the login hours where I can restrict the user from logging in at certain time. So this is where you can do it. And you can edit and go here and change. Let's say I want the user to be logged in. Let's say my company works 7 days a week, right? Because of the support policies, we have support throughout the year, and so people work in shift or whatever. So you can put like, okay, I wanted to give this specific user belonging to this profile from 8 a.m. access to 6 p.m. You can do that, and if they try to log in, let's say at 7, they will be denied access. So, and let's go back. So you have similarly an IP ranges, so you can specify an IP range. So the difference between this IP range and the trusted one is that trusted one won't block you from logging in to the Salesforce if you enter the right ID, valid ID code, 5-digit code or 6-digit code. But here, if you specify an IP range, and if your IP address from where you're logging in falls beyond the range of the IP specified, you won't be able to log into your org. So this is just to make sure you have tighter security. And you have password policies, and you have session settings. You can do a lot of stuff here. I mean, we can cover all of this, and it will take ages, because as profile is a beast. I mean, you can talk about it on and on. You can go on with the different aspects. Every time you look at profile, you will find something new. It's a very important topic to learn. It's very critical, in my opinion, to understand the Salesforce security, and especially the profiles and roles and permission sets, and different kind of access like org-wide access, sharing, all kind of stuff. It's very important to understand, because without that, you can't be a good Salesforce developer or an admin. So yeah, so I only wanted to show you a basic introduction to profiles, so that you get a basic glimpse about profile. So next time we'll be digging deep into assign apps, object settings, and probably we'll talk about Apex class access and kind of stuff. Uh, so, and we'll talk about roles as well. So, yeah, so I wanted to keep that for next lesson. Right, so that's all I wanted to cover, you guys. Oh, yeah, one last thing, sorry, before finish. If you go to user, right? I think last time we didn't cover this. You go to user, you go to the test user. You might, there is an option where you can make the user deactivate or make the user freeze, right? So what is the difference between deactivate and freeze? So sometimes what happens is that if this user could be a part of some workflow process or could be part of, let's say, lead, I think somewhere, lead generation, probably. Let me have a look. Sorry, not the one. Maybe there's, we don't have any process settings here. Okay, sorry. Lead settings. Default lead owner, right? You can see Mark Wilson. So if you're a user, so what happens is that when you create a lead, so if you don't, so it will automatically assign the lead owner to Mark, right? So if Mark has been set up as a default lead owner, then you will not be able to delete the. Then there will be implication of deactivating the user. So it's better to freeze at that time. So what happens is that, let's say Mark decides to leave the company, right? And Mark gone rogue and he decides to muck around with the Salesforce because he has an access to Salesforce, right? So, and obviously Mark has been used as a lead settings, and Mark will be used somewhere else as well, right? So now to stop Mark from fiddling with the system, from logging into Salesforce, the best way a Salesforce admin can do is go to users and let's say go to Mark and we'll freeze it. So it will temporarily block the account so that, you know, sysadmin can figure out all the necessary places where, you know, to remove Mark references. And so once all is done, you can deactivate the user. So this is one of the difference between freeze and deactivate, right? So that's a very simple difference. Just keep in mind it will come handy at times. And and there's sometimes what happens is that users will try to enter multiple times, and they forget the password. So if let's say I'm trying to enter to my org and I try 3 times and I call my Salesforce admin and say, look, I can't log into my org. So the first thing Salesforce admin will do is that come to my profile and we'll look at here. If there will be a unlock button. So if it's locked, so we can unlock it. And at the same time, they can look at my login history to what's going on. If it's a incorrect password or sometimes you may not find any information here. That's because the user is trying to enter the incorrect username, right? So you can't see a login. Let's say if I'm trying to enter my username is test123 at gmail.com. So if I enter test1234 at gmail.com, so I'm trying to enter as some other user, and then I'm expecting it and wondering what's happening, why I can't enter to my org. And I call my Salesforce admin saying, look, I can't enter to my org. It's frustrating. It's annoying. I don't like Salesforce because it's this is blah, blah, blah. So a sysadmin will come and say, what's going on? So he will look, he or she will come and look here and say, there's no login history. So the first question probably might ask, can you tell me what's the username you're using, right? So if you say, that's not the right username, and if that person is using the right username, then you will get some login history here. So that's one of the way to troubleshoot. So I mean, this is not really a kind of security topic, you can say. So that's the reason why I thought I will cover it, right? So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today, guys. I hope you guys found this session valuable. I'm sorry I didn't want to make it too big. because I wanted to talk about the basics of it. So all right, I'm enough of blah 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 from my side. I'm gonna end this. I hope you guys have a great day or great, so, and yeah.